kidding.
I lose my breath whenever I see you. You stole my heart, what is it that you do? My life was great till you added colors. Like the moon needs the sun, we don't care about the others. You set my world on fire. You're my heart's desire. I just wanna love you, just wanna hold you, just wanna be with you till we grow old. Please tell me you'll stay or take me away. I want you for myself every single day.
Hello you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking all about how to increase your milk supply if you are breastfeeding your baby. This video is especially if you are a new time mom and you're feeling a little overwhelmed with the whole breastfeeding thing, or perhaps you're struggling to make enough milk, and I'll explain why I do that in a little bit. Or perhaps you're a second time or third time mom and you didn't have a great breastfeeding experience the first time around and you need some tips and tricks to help increase your milk supply. I got you. I've done this 3 times. I'm currently breastfeeding my third baby who is 5 months old. I have a ton of milk in my freezer, and whilst I cannot guarantee that that will be the same for you, I definitely want to share my top tips and tricks to help you increase your milk supply, not give up, all that good stuff. But really, my main objective for this video is to give you hope that it can be done, and even if your breastfeeding journey starts off a little rocky in the beginning, we can really turn that around. So, if you're new here, my name is Julie. I'm an occupational therapist. As I said, I have 3 little ones who I've breastfed for extensive periods of time. I'm also just very interested in helping women be more successful with breastfeeding. I feel like there is a lot of information, not such great stuff, and shame around breastfeeding, so I just want to dispel all of that. Please make sure that you subscribe and that you click that little notification bell so that you know every time one of my videos goes live. Leave video suggestions in the comments, anything specific around parenting, organization, motherhood, all that stuff that you would like me to cover. I would love to know. And with all that said, let's jump right in. So before I get into the practical tips of how to actually boost your milk supply, as always, I want to start with the mindset, the attitude, all that good stuff. It's really important that if you are struggling to breastfeed, you examine your preconceived beliefs around breastfeeding. Did you grow up in a culture where everybody formula fed their baby, where that was just normal? You didn't really breastfeed. In certain cultures, breastfeeding was not seen as the thing that ladies do or the proper thing. It was often something that servants were required to do. That's where we got the term wet nurses. And you really need to examine that. If that is part of your worldview, that is going to impact your positive success with breastfeeding. What are the women in your life like in terms of their opinions towards breastfeeding? Are they very pro breastfeeding? Did they tell you that it came easily to them? Were you breastfed as a baby? Perhaps your mom donated milk to other babies. Perhaps she had to get milk from someone else. Think about even the social media that you consume. Is it fed is best, doesn't matter what you give them, just formula? Is that kind of programmed into your mind? Or is it something where we want you to try and breastfeed as much as possible, but obviously if you can't or you need to supplement, formula is fine? It's just important to examine those beliefs and be really honest with yourself. You don't even have to tell anybody if you're kind of ashamed about it or anything. You just need to take note. Something else that is very important with breastfeeding is, what is your goal? Now, with goals, that's the whole point. They're goals. They are not certainties, and you can only really say that you established a goal in hindsight, right? So a goal could be, I want to breastfeed for the first 3 months of my baby's life. I want to breastfeed until I return to work. I want to breastfeed until my child is a year old. As I said in my previous breastfeeding video, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that you breastfeed for at least 6 months exclusively. The World Health Organization recommends breastfeeding for 2 years. Obviously, your child is eating food at the same time. These organizations are really promoting long-term breastfeeding, and it's something to take note of. Keep that in mind also when you are formulating your goal. Perhaps your goal is to breastfeed as long as baby wants to, or as long as it's still going well for you and your mental health is in check, right? Those are all amazing goals. It doesn't have to be something that is, set in stone, but it is good to have some kind of goal that will help lead you towards where you want to go. All right, let's jump into practical ways that you can actually boost your milk supply. The first thing is, you might need to be breastfeeding more often than you have been told. New moms, people that have never had children before, they're often told to feed their babies every 3 hours. Especially if you're gonna bottle feed, this is kind of the routine that people recommend you get on. And that's a great routine. It gives you flexibility, you know when baby's gonna eat, awesome. But if you're having a low supply or supply issues, you may need to feed your baby more often. So the recommendation is 8 to 12 times a day. I really like to consider that during awake time. You will have to get up in the middle of the night to feed your baby, and it just depends on your baby as to how often that will be. But my rule of thumb, you have to think of your baby like a cell phone, and you need to charge that baby. And I would recommend that you charge that baby, i.e. you feed them as much as possible during the day so that you're gonna have longer stretches at night. When they're super newborn, sort of 0 to 4 weeks old, night and day are kind of all smushed together, but baby will start to sleep for longer periods at night, even if it's going from 3 hours to 5 hours to 6 hours as they get a little bit older, as young as 4 or 5 weeks old, as long as they know what is day and what is night, and that's often determined by feeding. Not really overfeed a breastfed baby, so you shouldn't feel worried about that. But if they're getting enough milk during the day, they will sleep for longer at night. And if your milk supply is kind of low, you need to be feeding them a little bit more often. Something that a friend of mine recommended to me when I had my first child that really helped me and kind of set the course for how I was going to do this for the next however long I have children was to pump after the morning feed. So what she recommended is that I feed the baby on both sides. That's another tip. Make sure you're feeding both sides to stimulate both sides. And then you pump after that, especially if you're trying to boost your milk supply. And the reason why I recommend doing this in the morning, but obviously you can pump whenever you want to, whenever you have the opportunity, is you hopefully have rested at night for a certain amount of time, then you feed the baby, and then you have milk left over because they probably won't need to drink as much as you have to produce in the morning. And usually towards the end of the day, once we're kind of tired and stressed out and we haven't had time to rest, we've been running around, perhaps we haven't eaten enough, you have less milk. So you're less likely to get milk through pumping at the end of the day. That being said, I feel like I've had an oversupply of milk for this baby, and I usually pump every night. I mentioned this in my pumping video that I'll have linked down below. Basically, I pump before I go to bed because my baby sleeps for longer periods at night, and so she's not eating as frequently, and if I don't pump, I get super uncomfortable because oversupply is also an issue, right? So just find a time of day. I recommend in the morning after the first feed to pump, and that slowly will help you get more milk. I also always tell my friends and clients that there are 3 things that you need to make milk as a lactating mammal, and that is food, enough calories, preferably good quality calories, but you do you, enough water. I'm talking like, I think it's 100 ounces or about 3 liters. You can do more if you're thirsty, do more if you have a baby in the summer and you're sweating a lot, do more if you're more active. Drink as much water as is comfortable for you, but do not skimp out on the water, because think of it like this. The milk is like little milk in there, plus water gives you actual breast milk. And then the third thing is rest. So if you are struggling like right now to boost your milk supply, this is what you have to do. You have to somehow find grandma or auntie or babysitter or your husband or your partner that can help you look after the baby while you take a 2-hour nap in the afternoon. Because as I said, the reason you have more milk in the morning is because you've rested during the night. The same thing needs to happen in the afternoon if you need to start building up milk. And so you need to be resting if making milk is an issue for you right now. Julie, how am I gonna rest? I have so much to do. I need to clean, I need blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is perfectly valid, but if you can't feed your baby, trust me, that is gonna be your #1 stress. So you wanna make sure that you're prioritizing your rest, and you probably really need it if you're not making enough milk. And this is the universe's way of telling you that you need to lie down and take a nap. If you Google online ways to boost milk supply, often things will come up like medications, herbs. But my experience with lactation cookies and lactation food, apparently that's a thing too, is that, yeah, it's a nice to have. There's no high level evidence that this stuff actually works. Perhaps it's just never been studied. It's a little bit of an old wives' tale that certain herbs will boost milk supply. And hey, as long as they're breastfeeding safe and you want to try them, be my guest. Herbs such as like fenugreek is supposed to be good, and fennel, and then brewer's yeast, which is different from nutritional yeast or the yeast that you use to make things rise, instant yeast. So make sure you're getting the right one. That is often the ingredient along with oats that is added to lactation cookies. But hey, if someone's going to make you cookies, or you want to make cookies that have some chocolate chips, some oats, and some brewer's yeast in them, I'm not going to stop you. That sounds great. That sounds delicious. And as I said, you need food, calories, water, and rest. So if that's going to provide you with your food and take down some of the stress by baking, then go for it. I mentioned earlier that you should make sure that you are putting baby on both sides. So something that I've mentioned in the past is that breastfeeding is a supply and demand economy, i.e. your body is responding to what the demand is and providing you with the supply. Now, this goes down to the minutia of actually feeding on both sides. Explaining to my 6-year-old today that our 5-month-old baby does not actually drink water. She literally subsists on breast milk alone. She has nothing else, which kind of blows my mind that she gets her solids and her liquids in one liquid thing. But the reason she does that is because in the breast, before you're breastfeeding, there is hind milk and fore milk. Now, fore milk is what will come out of your breast if you are feeling very engorged, very watery, and it satisfies their thirst. So when you put the baby first on and they are very hungry, they're going to drink and drink and drink, and you're going to hear that gulping and swallowing and all that good stuff, and they're thirsty. They're actually thirsty. But you need to keep them on there for long enough that they can access the hind milk. And the hind milk has all their calories, has a lot of fat in there, is very rich and creamy, kind of like a whole milk consistency, versus the fore milk being like a skim milk consistency. And it's super important that they are accessing milk from all over, because your body then responds to that and produces a well-balanced nutritional set of milk from each side. There's always this debate, because I feel like in the hospital, the nurses, the lactation consultants will tell you that babies need to nurse for 20 minutes on each side. Now, I don't know about you, but my newborn babies, there was just no way that they were going to do 20 minutes at a time. And so you just need to do what's best for you. I even think 5, 6, 10 minutes for a tiny, tiny baby is a pretty long time. As they get older, when they go through growth spurts and cluster feeding, yeah, maybe they'll breastfeed for 20 minutes, but I feel like they get more efficient as they get older. And so they'll be able to, if they're hungry enough, they're going to drink that milk down in quick 7-8 minutes, and you've drained each side. So make sure that you are balancing which side you feed on. Maybe you do one feed on one side, one feed on the other side, or maybe within a feed you do predominantly one side and then you just give a little bit of a top up from the other side. So both breasts are being stimulated and you're producing milk from both sides. Obviously, I spoke about pumping as well. You can always add in a second pumping session if you're trying to boost your supply, because it's going to, make your body think that it needs to produce more milk. But it's not going to produce milk if you don't have those 3 things, which are calories, liquid, water, and rest. So make sure you have those basics down, and then the stimulation from your baby nursing and from the pumping is going to really help to boost your supply. Other thing is keep your expectations in check. This may not happen overnight. This may take a week. This may take 10 days. If your life is very stressful, which I'm going to talk about next as to things that decrease your milk supply, it's going to take longer. So there might be other things that you need to change. But let me tell you, it is possible to do this. Imagine that formula was not an option for you. You didn't have access to formula. It didn't exist. What would you do? You would try everything to help breastfeed. And the thing is, you're going to go through this transitional period for a little bit of time, and then it's going to work for you and be amazing. Okay, so let's talk about things that decrease your milk supply, that might have put you in this position in the first place. I hear from a lot of moms that I just couldn't produce enough milk. I always run out of milk, and every baby I've had, I can only feed them for a couple of months and then I run out of milk. Now, I can't say that that's true or not. That's your personal journey, but just think about the things that you're saying to yourself out loud that might be making that come true. That's the first thing, is again, like what I spoke about, your attitude. If you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. You're both right. So just think about that. The next thing is, I feel like when moms are pressured to go back to work too soon, 6 weeks, 1 month, 3 months, sometimes breastfeeding hasn't been well established yet, and that can really decrease your milk supply because suddenly you're not sleeping, you have a whole other job to attend to besides looking after this little baby, especially if it's your first baby. Perhaps you're very nervous, you don't know what you're doing. I feel like child rearing is a whole job, new job in and of itself that parents are not really equipped for. You know, we go to university and we do internships and we get coaches and mentors for all of these things that we do in our lives, but not for parenting, which is arguably the most important thing because you want to raise good, kind human beings. But that's a separate rant that I can go on. And so the stress of having to return to work or just having to take on too much when you really need to be prioritizing yourself is drastically going to impact your milk supply. So if you're finding that you are very stressed, you have a lot of responsibilities, and your milk supply is dropping, something needs to give. And if you feel that it is important for your child to have breast milk and you want to breastfeed them for longer than you are feeling like you're going to be able to, then for sure that needs to take priority and you need to follow all of those steps that I recommended earlier. Alongside returning to work, things that are going to decrease your milk supply are time away from your baby. As I said, supply and demand. If the demand is not there and that powerful stimulation of even hearing your baby cry, seeing your baby, thinking about your baby is not there, your milk supply is going to decrease because your body thinks there's no baby. So you want to make sure that you are spending enough time with your child. Another thing that can happen when you are not managing your breastfeeding situation well is that you can get mastitis, you can get engorgement, and that could lead to taking medication. That could lead to you being in bed for a few days. That's a whole thing that I think I should make a video about. So let me know if you want me to make a video about how to prevent mastitis and keep your boobs healthy. But basically, if you get mastitis, you do need to be feeding your baby. But if you get really sick or you have to be hospitalized or something, or they give you antibiotics that they don't recommend you feed with, that is going to limit how much milk you produce because you're unable to feed. Alongside all of that water that I spoke about is noticing your caffeine intake. Not only is it probably not ideal for baby to be drinking too much caffeine, I think they can have a little bit through the breast milk, but caffeine also dehydrates you. So you might be drinking all this water and then you're drinking all this coffee because you're so tired, and then that kind of just creates a lot of dehydration and it can take away all the good things that you're trying to do. So just be aware of your caffeine intake. And then my final one is your support or lack thereof. This can be cultural support. So as I said, if people are encouraging you to stop breastfeeding because it's easier, I would disagree that it is easier. But if people are telling you that you know, it's just easier to give formula and it's no big deal there, it's fine, the baby will be fine, which is true, the baby will be fine. And I don't want this to come across as I'm judging you if you give your baby formula. But if breastfeeding is important to you and a value of yours, you want to be able to do it. So look at the culture around you. Is that causing you to second guess your decision? Do you feel like you're unsupported maybe by your spouse or your extended family or your work? You have the right to have pumping breaks at work, and sometimes when work is very stressful and it's really busy, that's the first thing that you sacrifice. That's the first thing that you don't do. And over time, A, that puts you at risk for mastitis because you're not relieving yourself regularly enough, and B, that's going to limit your supply because A, if you're working away from baby and you actually have to pump, there's no baby there to help stimulate your milk in your brain because that's where it starts first. And secondly, you know, you're not pumping enough, so your body's just going to think that you don't need the milk. So all of these things kind of just work towards having a lower supply. Those are my top tips for boosting your milk supply and reasons why your milk supply may be dropping. I really want you not to give up. Make sure you leave in the comments if there's anything I can help you with or any questions that you have. Write me a comment down below or send me a DM on Instagram. I'm more than happy to talk to you about this ad nauseum and help you because I really think that women need more support when it comes to breastfeeding, and it's just not there for us and we need to make a change. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, click that notification bell, share this video with a mom that is about to have a baby or is struggling with breastfeeding and might need some help. I would love to be that support for them because I know how important it is to feed your baby. Breast milk is awesome, and I feel like everybody should at least have the opportunity to breastfeed if that is something that they want. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye guys.